Did Prince Harry illegally enter the US? This is a claim the Heritage Foundation is seeming to be making in new docs filed with the courts. I have your favourite DC lawyer, John Witherspoon, to explain more. Hey up everyone, it's me, Stef the Alternate, your nerdy alternative, and welcome to the Dose of the Daily Nerd, where I break down the royal news and gossip of the day that's pretty much caught my eye. And oh my goodness, yeah, let's jump into this, shall we? Because the Heritage Foundation seems to be claiming in new docs filed with the courts that Prince Harry may have illegally entered the US. I have your favourite DC lawyer, John Witherspoon, here to explain more. Thank you so much for joining me on this video, my friend. And yeah, this definitely caught my eye. This article from none other than Jack Royston himself on Newsweek. Prince Harry should not have been admitted to the US, legal filing claims. Thanks to John, we have the legal filing right here. So, without further ado, John, take it away. What does this all mean? Is the Heritage Foundation literally claiming that Prince Harry has illegally entered the US? I mean, what's going on, mate?
Well, Steph, good to speak with you, and thanks for having me on. Yes, there have been a couple of developments on the Harry front specifically, and as you mentioned, this filing with the court in his visa Freedom of Information Act case that was originally filed by the Heritage Foundation. And basically what the Heritage Foundation has done in this motion is they have invoked what's called Rule 59E. And as people may recall, the judge previously ruled that Harry's visa information and all the files that are in various places at the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, he ruled that all of that should remain private for a variety of reasons, some of which are known, but some of which are not known. And the reason that Heritage filed this motion, this 59E motion, is to basically go back to Judge Nichols and to say to him, hey, we think you ought to check your math. And Rule 59E allows them to say, we think that your ruling had some mistakes in it. Before we go to the appeals court, which is probably something that Heritage is likely to do at some point if they don't get their way, before we take the time and the trouble of going to the appeals court and starting up the whole process with them, we think you should go back, as I said, and check your math and really make sure that everything that you said in your opinion is correct and is in accordance with the local rules and with the federal rules of civil procedure, which apply to this particular situation. And their complaint is that when the judge made his ruling, he left out or he redacted so much information that it really puts the Heritage Foundation in a difficult position, because what they're saying is, we don't really have enough information to file an effective appeal because you have redacted so much information and you have made so much of this information unavailable to us through what were ex parte communications from the Department of Homeland Security. And what that means is that Homeland Security sent some information to the judge that Heritage Foundation did not have a chance to see. They did not have a chance to review the impact of those communications in the judge's ruling. So what they're saying is, hey, Judge, we respect you, we appreciate what you've done, but we would like you to go back and reconsider this based on some additional arguments that we're making, again, with respect to the federal rules of civil procedure, the local rules that apply to you as a judge, as part of the court that you sit on. And it'll be very interesting to see what the judge does. My guess would be that the judge will say, you know what, I'm comfortable with what I did, and I'm not going to go back and reconsider a whole lot of my ruling, but you never know. So they may get some satisfaction from Judge Nichols as a result of filing this ruling, or they may just end up having to go to the appellate court at some point within the next couple of months. Of course, the interesting angle on all of this is that the administration is going to change on January 20th. There'll be a new sheriff in town, so to speak, in the form of President Trump. And he may take a different perspective on this particular matter. And we'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. But for the time being, this is still an open case. The Heritage Foundation clearly wants to pursue it further. One thing that has not been widely reported is that they have actually added some lawyers to the case, I believe, one or two additional ones, which says to me that they are not throwing in the towel anytime soon. They're going to bring some more legal expertise to bear on this. So the other thing that was interesting about this was that in this filing, Heritage kind of kicked things up a notch. And as Steph mentioned a moment ago, there's an allegation now that they've kind of become more public with, which is what you see there on the screen. And it's been called out in this Newsweek piece from Jack Royston. And basically what they're saying is, this is now more than just a situation where we are concerned that there may have been some behind the scenes maneuvering in terms of how visas were issued to Harry and whether he was given a special exception or whether he lied on the application. Now they've come out and they've pretty much said, we don't think the guy ought to be in the country in the first place, which is a little bit of a stronger statement than they had made before.
Yeah, and I mean, it was an absolute shocker when I saw that headline. I was like, wow, they're really going in now. They're really kind of going for the jugular, saying, look, we now believe Prince Harry illegally entered the US. Show us the documentation under seal so that, we can actually mount a proper appeal. Because now this is deadly serious. Now, you mentioned earlier on that there is going to be a new sheriff in town next month. Now, essentially what happened was about over a week ago, the Actual Foundation released its 2023 994, albeit couple of weeks late after their 6-month extension, but they did it nonetheless. And I released this video because to me, their biggest donation could actually be looked upon by the IRS as a donation violation. Why? Because their biggest donation, the Actual Foundation made in 2023, was to Joe Biden's daughter's charity. Now, John, you actually watched this video and you sent me a message and you said that actually in the aftermath of Hunter's pardon, this could actually irk Trump and make it more likely that he pays attention now to Harry's visa. So could this donation have actually backfired on Harry and his whole visa fight?
Well, I think it really could. And I think this is a very underreported aspect of the whole situation. And it touches his visa, it touches Archwell, it touches American politics. The postmortems on the Biden administration are starting to be written. And for those outside the United States, or probably even some in the United States, one of the things that has happened recently has been Joe Biden using his presidential pardon authority, which is something that is granted to him under law, to pardon his son and his son Hunter. And Hunter had been involved in a lot of different activities, most of which I think could reasonably be, in most people's opinion, could be put under the category of possible influence peddling. That's sort of a dark cloud that has hung over the relationship between Joe Biden and his son recently. There have also been some things in there about, I think there was an income tax problem that Hunter had that he was in some legal trouble for, and some firearms and weapons issues that he was allegedly not as honest as he might have been on some of the paperwork that he filed. Again, all of this sort of goes under a dark cloud of pay for play, influence peddling. Those are just the impressions that most people have in terms of what they think was really going on. If you take that a step to the side, you could probably say, you know what, if this kind of stuff was going on with Hunter Biden, where there were dollars coming in and influences being, peddled and asked for and so forth, in particular with respect to some of Hunter Biden's dealings in Ukraine. It's not a huge stretch, I think, in most people's opinion, to say, you know what, maybe there's been some similar activity going on as far as Joe Biden's daughter and her charity. And of all the charities in the United States or the world that Archwell and Harry and Meghan could have made donations to, lo and behold, here's a donation to a charity, as Steph just said, that's being run by Joe Biden's daughter. Isn't that a little bit odd? Why, other than just through, altruism and being good stewards of Archwell's money and so forth, why did they pick this particular charity to make this donation to? It just raises a lot of questions in a lot of people's minds. Again, I'm not saying that there was absolutely definitively something going wrong here. That's not the case. This is all opinion and speculation, but it just doesn't look very good. Again, in light of some of the other things that have happened within the Biden family, between Joe Biden and one of his children, it just raises a lot of questions in most people's minds, I think. The other thing that's interesting about this, as far as, again, the new sheriff coming into town, I don't think there's any secret that Harry and Meghan have been big supporters of the Bidens. They have also been very outspoken, in particular Harry, and this goes to some of his comments in the past about the First Amendment being bonkers, and then this interview that he just did within the last week or so at the New York Times Forum, where he constantly talks about misinformation and disinformation and how he wants to do something about that, allegedly under the notion that he's doing this to protect children. Well, a lot of people are digging a little bit deeper in that regard and saying that really what's going on here is that this is all part and parcel of what some people, and in particular, there have been some YouTubers who have really done a good job looking into this, talking about the so-called censorship industrial complex, which is this whole idea that there's misinformation, disinformation, et cetera, and it needs to be stopped. And I think a reasonable person could look at this and say, you know what, Harry's not really talking about protecting children. What he's really getting at is people saying things that he doesn't like. And underlying this whole notion of mis and disinformation is, who is the arbiter? Who is going to make the decision about what constitutes misinformation or disinformation? That has been a huge issue in the United States going back several years. Those in the UK are certainly aware of all the conversations that are being had about this. Jeremy Clarkson has had a big issue with allegedly inappropriate speech. In Scotland and Wales, from what I read, there's all sorts of legislation being passed to restrict what people can say. And again, the question becomes, who is the person who is entitled to decide what is correct and acceptable information and what is not acceptable information? So if you tie all of this stuff together, it makes Harry kind of a poster child for what a lot of people in the United States find very objectionable. And he has said it in his own words, the First Amendment is bonkers. Well, the First Amendment exists in large part because of a war that some Americans fought to gain independence from a country where they didn't feel like the First Amendment guarantees of speech and expression and so forth were being protected. And that's why it is something that's very fundamental in the United States. So it's thickly ironic, in my opinion, that Harry, who may or may not be in the United States appropriately, and who is here as a member of the royal family, and don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing on the royal family, but he is here as a guest of the United States, as a representative in some way of the country that the United States fought to get away from, And he is talking about something that is utterly fundamental. And that brings us to the whole point of, again, the new sheriff in town. There have been some videos, and I think Steph has one that's queued up, where Donald Trump, regardless of what you think of the guy, he has some very, very strong views about freedom of speech, the First Amendment, and this whole notion of misinformation and disinformation. As people will recall, he was thrown off of Twitter at one point because of an allegation of him spreading misinformation and disinformation. I'm not going to get into whether that was an appropriate thing for Twitter to do or not, and the specifics of what he said, but he has some very strong views on that subject. And what I guess I'm really getting at is that if Harry were smart, I think, he would be extremely careful about poking the bear, so to speak, in terms of his views on misinformation and disinformation, because with his visa situation and with this continued banging on that he does about wanting to control speech and so forth, and Donald Trump being very adamant and very animated in his own views about that, I think there's a recipe for a major train wreck to occur. And the way that that might occur would be Donald Trump just making a comment to somebody and saying, you know what, I'm really tired of hearing about Prince Harry. He's giving all these interviews. He doesn't shut his mouth. He is being a very rude and unwelcome guest in the United States. I can easily see Trump having that perspective on Harry's presence here. He is a rude and unwelcome guest in the United States. I have the authority to do something about that, or at least make his life uncomfortable. I can easily see that becoming a scenario that comes together very quickly in the near future after January 20th, when Trump takes office.
Yeah, well, guys, on that bombshell, what do you think to all of this? Will we actually get to a conclusion whereby the Heritage Foundation's claim is right, that Prince Harry should not have been admitted to the US? In other words, that Prince Harry illegally entered the US? Will we ever get to the bottom of it? Well, thank you so much to John for joining me on this very, very important video. If you have any questions about what he said in this video or any previous videos on this channel, then do head on over to his Instagram. Follow him there at WitherspoonDC. It's the only place you're able to ask him any questions that you may have. Please bear in mind, he may not be able to answer all your questions, but it's a place where you can ask him nonetheless. And in the meantime, on your way out, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to join our alternate tribe. Like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And until next time, you guys, laters.
Take care.